Heavy envelope, trembling hands. Sarah opened it. DNA test. A match found. A name she didn't recognize. A man. A relative. Her heart raced as she Googled him. The screen filled with headlines. Unsolved murder case reopened. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just a name. It was a shadow. A secret. A killer. And he was family. Sarah's mind spiraled. How could this man, this stranger, share her blood? She scrolled through the family tree she'd meticulously built over years. No trace of him. It was as if he'd been scrubbed from existence. She called her mother, her voice shaking. "Mom, who is James Carter?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, a sigh. "Sarah, some doors are better left closed." But Sarah couldn't stop now. The ghost in her family tree had a name, and she was determined to give him a story, one that might rewrite everything she thought she knew. The library archives smelled of mildew and forgotten stories. Sarah pored over microfiche, her eyes scanning decades-old newspapers. There it was. Local woman found dead in 1987. The victim, Linda Marsh, had been strangled. The prime suspect? James Carter. But the case had gone cold, the evidence too circumstantial. Sarah's stomach churned. Was this the man she was related to? A killer? She needed answers, but the trail was ice cold. And yet, something nagged at her. Why had her family buried this? What were they hiding? The past wasn't just haunting her, it was hunting her. Sarah's grandmother, Evelyn, was the keeper of the family's secrets. At 85, she was sharp but guarded. Sarah approached her cautiously, the DNA results in hand. "Grandma, who is James Carter?" Evelyn's eyes clouded. "He was your uncle," she whispered. But he was troubled. Sarah pressed further. Was he capable of murder? Evelyn's hands trembled. "We all have darkness in us, Sarah. But James, he was different. He disappeared after the trial. We never spoke of him again." Sarah's heart ached. This wasn't just about solving a crime. It was about unraveling a family's pain, stitch by painful stitch. Sarah tracked down the retired detective who had worked Linda Marsh's case. His name was Frank Delaney, and he was a man haunted by the unsolved. James Carter was a ghost, Frank said, flipping through his old notebook. No alibi, no motive, just suspicion. Sarah leaned in. But why did the case go cold? Frank sighed. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence vanished. It was like someone didn't want it solved. Sarah's mind raced. Was her family involved in a cover-up, or was James simply a scapegoat? The truth was a labyrinth, and she was just beginning to find her way. Frank's notebook mentioned a key witness, a waitress named Maggie who claimed to have seen James arguing with Linda the night she died. But Maggie had vanished before she could testify. Sarah dug deeper, tracking down old addresses and phone records. Finally, she found her living under a new name in a small town. Maggie was hesitant to talk. "I left for a reason," she said. "That case, it wasn't what it seemed." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Maggie's voice dropped to a whisper. James wasn't the only one with secrets. Linda had her own demons. Linda Marsh wasn't just a victim, she was a woman with a past. Sarah uncovered letters Linda had written to a lover, someone she called Jay. The letters hinted at a dangerous affair, one that could have gotten her killed. Was James the jealous type, or was Jay someone else entirely? Sarah's head spun. The case was no longer black and white. It was a kaleidoscope of lies, love, and betrayal. And at the center of it all was Linda, a woman whose life and death had been far more complicated than anyone realized. James Carter's alibi had always been shaky. He claimed he was home alone the night Linda died. But Sarah found a receipt from a gas station miles away, time-stamped just hours before the murder. Had James lied, or was he covering for someone? Sarah's mind raced. If James wasn't the killer, who was? And why had he disappeared? The receipt was a thread, and Sarah pulled it, unraveling a tapestry of deceit that stretched far beyond what she had imagined. The truth was a puzzle, and every piece she found only made the picture more confusing. Sarah's father, Tom, had always been a man of few words. But when she asked about James, his brother, his walls came down. James was troubled, Tom said, his voice heavy. But he wasn't a killer. He took the fall for someone. Sarah's breath caught. Who? Tom shook his head. I can't say. Some secrets are too dangerous to uncover. Sarah's heart ached. Her father had carried this burden for decades, a silent sentinel guarding a truth that could destroy them all. But Sarah couldn't stop now. The truth was a fire, and it was burning through her. In the attic of her grandmother's house, Sarah found a loose floorboard. Beneath it was a letter, addressed to James. The handwriting was shaky, the words desperate. "I'm sorry," it read. "I never meant for it to go this far." The signature was illegible, but the message was clear. Someone had confessed. Sarah's hands trembled. Was this the key to the case, or just another layer of the mystery? The letter was a whisper from the past, a plea for forgiveness that had gone unanswered. And now it was in Sarah's hands, a burden and a clue. Sarah played the tape she found with the letter. It was a confession, recorded in secret. The voice was muffled, but the words were clear. "I killed her. I didn't mean to, but I did." Sarah's blood ran cold. The voice wasn't James's. It was someone else, someone she knew. The confession was a bombshell, but it raised more questions than answers. Who had recorded it, and why had they kept it hidden? The truth was a shadow, always just out of reach. But Sarah was getting closer, and the closer she got, the more dangerous it became. The confession led Sarah to a name. Richard, her grandfather. The man who had always been the family's rock. But the tape revealed a different side of him, a man capable of violence, of betrayal. Sarah's mind reeled. Had Richard killed Linda? And if so, why had James taken the blame? The family's secrets were a web, and Sarah was caught in the middle. Every answer she found only led to more questions. The truth was a labyrinth, and she was running out of time to find the exit. Sarah found evidence of a payoff, thousands of dollars stashed in her grandfather's old shoebox. The money was dated around the time of Linda's murder. Was this hush money? Had Richard paid someone to keep quiet? Sarah's heart pounded. The cover-up went deeper than she had imagined. It wasn't just about protecting James. It was about protecting the family's reputation, their legacy. But at what cost? The truth was a storm, and Sarah was standing in the eye of it, watching as the winds of deceit swirled around her. Maggie, the waitress, reappeared, her face pale and drawn. "I couldn't stay silent anymore," she said, handing Sarah a folded piece of paper. It was a statement, written in shaky handwriting, detailing what she had seen the night Linda died. "It wasn't James," Maggie said. "It was someone else. Someone you know." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the statement. The truth was finally within reach. But it came with a price. The closer she got, the more dangerous it became. The past wasn't just haunting her, it was hunting her. Sarah had all the pieces now. The confession, the payoff, the witness statement. But one question remained. Why had James disappeared? The answer came in the form of a letter, written by James himself. "I couldn't stay," it read. "I knew too much. And knowing too much is a death sentence." Sarah's heart ached. James had been a pawn in a game he never wanted to play. And now it was up to her to set the record straight. The truth was a burden, but it was one she was willing to carry. Sarah confronted her grandfather, the evidence laid out before him. "Why, Richard? Why did you do it?" His face crumpled. "It was an accident," he said. "I never meant to hurt her." But when James found out, he offered to take the blame. He said he had nothing to lose. Sarah's heart broke. Her family's legacy was built on lies, on sacrifice, on pain. But now it was time to set the record straight. The truth was a fire, and it was time to let it burn. Sarah took the evidence to the police, reopening the cold case. The trial was swift, the verdict clear. Richard was guilty of manslaughter. James's name was cleared, but the damage was done. The family was fractured, their secrets laid bare. Sarah stood in the courtroom, her heart heavy but resolute. The truth had cost her everything, but it was a price she was willing to pay. The past was finally at rest, and so was she. The aftermath was quiet, like the calm after a storm. Sarah's family was broken, but healing. James's name was cleared, but he remained a ghost, a reminder of the past they had tried to bury. Sarah looked at the family photo, the one with Richard carefully cut out. It was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild. The truth had been a fire, but it had also been a cleanse. And now, it was time to move forward. Sarah planted a tree in Linda's memory, its roots deep and strong. It was a symbol of growth, of resilience. The past had been a shadow, but now it was a foundation. Sarah looked at the tree, its branches stretching toward the sky. The truth had been a burden, but it had also been a gift. And now, it was time to let it grow. Sarah stood at the edge of the road, the sun setting behind her. The past was behind her, but the future was ahead. The truth had been a journey, but it was one she was glad she had taken. The road stretched before her, endless and full of possibility. The end was just the beginning, and Sarah was ready. Sarah sat alone in her apartment, the weight of the truth pressing down on her. She had uncovered the secrets, exposed the lies, and brought justice to Linda's memory. But at what cost? Her family was fractured, her relationship strained. The scales of justice felt unbalanced, the weight of guilt and grief tipping them into chaos. Sarah wondered if the truth was worth the pain it had caused. But deep down, she knew it was. The truth was a burden, but it was also a release. And now, it was time to carry it forward. James Carter remained a ghost, a specter in Sarah's mind. She had cleared his name, but he was still out there, somewhere. Sarah often wondered if he knew what she had done, if he felt the weight of her actions. She thought of him often, this uncle she had never met. This man who had sacrificed everything for a family that had abandoned him. James was a reminder of the cost of loyalty, of the price of silence. And Sarah knew she would never forget him. Sarah's mother reached out to her, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." Sarah took a hand, the gesture small but significant. The healing had begun, slow and fragile, like a seedling pushing through cracked earth. The truth had broken them, but it was also the glue that would bind them back together. Sarah knew it would take time, but she was willing to wait. Hope dawns, future's theirs.